Is this thing on?
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Summits Podcast. Thank you all for joining us from wherever you get your podcasts. And for those of you watching on the Heroes Foundation YouTube channel, thank you for tuning in. We hope you all had a great holiday season. Happy 2023. Would love to hear any interesting new New Year's resolutions. Put it in the comments field below. We'd like to check those out, and then we'll hold you to them come the end of the year. See how you did. With us today, our guest is Mr. Scott Mingle. Scott is a new employee of the Heroes Foundation. He has recently been hired as a program and event manager. So, Scott, not only welcome to the Heroes Foundation, but welcome to the Summits Podcast.
Thanks. Is this thing on?
It is. Yep, you are live. Scott, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me, both on the podcast and with the organization. I have been with Special Olympics for 18 years, or I should say Special Olympics Indiana, for the last 18 years. And I grew up in Indiana, in the Muncie area, and went to school at University of Evansville.
Purple Aces.
Purple Aces, baby. But since then, I've actually lived all over, mostly the East Coast. I have lived in the Chicago area, the D.C. area, Florida, Connecticut, Atlanta, North Carolina, back here, and a short stint in Utah.
Okay.
Well.
What took you to each of those cities?
It was work.
Okay.
So most of those have all been event bases, some Special Olympics, some Paralympics, World Cup Soccer, World Police and Fire Games, things like that. So, yeah.
A lot of different events there, some pretty large events. I mean, World Cup's kind of big. Having just watched, several of those games. What... I'm sure there's a lot of stories, so I can't. Yeah. I mean, it'd be hard to single one out. But I guess my basic question would be: of those different events, if you had to pick one, which I know is probably hard to do, which one stands out the most? I'm not gonna say which one's the best because that wouldn't be fair. But which one stands out the most that you were like, that was awesome for whatever reason?
Gosh. That is hard. There's been a couple. I actually got to work on the Special Olympic World Games that were in Abu Dhabi. That was an incredible experience. And probably the next one that I would single out is the Paralympics in Atlanta. Were just outstanding. And
the Paralympics are typically held right after the actual Olympics, correct?
Correct. Okay. Same venues and so forth, yeah.
And so obviously that one took place right after the Olympic Games were held in Atlanta. That was the Summer Games. What was your primary role for some of those events?
So the one in Atlanta, I forget what my exact title was, but I was basically the manager of the Athletes Village. So especially on the logistics side of everything. And when you first asked that question, one of the memories that I have from that, of course it's international. Athletes coming over from other countries, European athletes at that time a lot of them still smoked.
Unbelievable to think about that.
Unbelievable, but
world-class athlete.
Yeah. But
French and Italian mostly?
Yeah.
Or wherever?
Yeah. but it was late at night. Probably past 10 o'clock, and I don't remember what I was doing, but a couple athletes were coming out of one of the dorms, just kind of, hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? Oh, we're going to go out and have a smoke, and both of them had both arms amputated.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, you're seeing, all these athletes with the physical disabilities doing all these incredible things. But so I was used to it a little bit at that point, but they walk on by and I just stop for a second. I'm like, okay, how are you going to light the cigarette?
Right.
So that was just one thing that just, has always stuck in my mind. Just one of those little behind the scenes stories that is just incredible.
Right. Wow. So, Scott, with your new role with the Heroes Foundation, one of the primary events we're focusing on is Fit for Heroes, and how we're looking to grow and really kind of achieve the vision that we have for that. You and I have had some early conversations, obviously, about that, and I've already started going down that path of planning for 2023 and beyond. What things stand out to you right now in terms of what is exciting and what the challenges that lie ahead for blowing that event and scaling that event up?
Yeah, part of the excitement is the fitness aspect of it. That's been part of my how I ID myself a little bit. Even though I'm not in great shape now, that's been part of my life the whole time, and so just getting that out there, getting the people that are already have a fitness routine, but getting other people to join in and change their lifestyle. That's really exciting and important, and going to be a challenge as well. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now.
Sure. And then, of course, Fit for Heroes kind of has a natural tie-in to the program of Project Militia that a lot of our listeners and viewers may not be real familiar with. Some of the ideas there, of course, are kind of blowing that thing up a little bit and then restructuring what we want it to be. But really, the gist of it is being a program centered on the summit of cancer prevention. Right. And so the cancer prevention piece of Project Militia and the cancer prevention piece of Fit for Heroes kind of naturally align. Any thoughts at all in terms of Project Militia, of what, any thoughts or ideas you have there in terms of what you'd like to see it accomplish over the next, 12 to 24 months?
I think just awareness, as much as anything, of starting to get our name out there a little bit more, having some presence at some other events, possibly, things like that. Education, just kind of the whole tie-in of fitness and diet and lifestyle, of what that means for cancer prevention.
Right on. Perfect. Well, I appreciate you joining us. We're excited to see what happens over the next 12 to 24 months, and I'm amped. I'm excited because everyone who's been very close to Heroes Foundation knows that it hasn't been any secret, or I haven't been quiet about where I think Fit for Heroes can be and can go, and so I'm excited to have you on board to start realizing some of that potential. So Scott, the focus of this podcast. What is your cancer story?
So it's kind of varied a little bit, where we've talked about this briefly, but both of my grandmothers died of cancer. One actually passed away before I was even born. The other passed away when I was pretty young. And then my father is a cancer survivor, about probably 15 years ago. But even those three experiences weren't what motivated me to come to the Heroes Foundation. I had a good buddy from the running community that I was friends with for probably close to 20 years. Had beaten cancer twice, melanoma, and then a third time it came back as brain cancer, and that was inoperable. And as that progressed, he got to the point to where, balance and memory and things like that were an issue, to where he didn't really need care. He could still take care of himself and things like that, but he needed assistance. Mm-hmm. And it was right in the middle of the pandemic. And so there was a group of 6 or 8 or so of us that actually stayed with him 24/7. Took turns. We had a schedule. Okay, who can do Tuesday, and who can do Wednesday, right, and that kind of thing. So going through that was pretty eye-opening and traumatic a little bit, kind of thing, watching him go downhill. And then recently I've got a good buddy of mine that was just diagnosed with bladder cancer. It was pretty aggressive. He was a roommate from college. Of course, how close you get with those buddies.
Sure, yeah.
But beyond that, when he was from the Chicago area, in Indiana, but right up there, the region. And right. When I moved to that area, I lived with his parents until I got, established up there. He ended up marrying a woman from Canada, and so they lived in Canada for a number of years, had a kid. Then they moved to New Zealand.
Okay.
And then at some point they moved to Indy, and when they did that, they moved in with me for about 9 months. And so I went from a single person living on my own to instant family. And then they eventually moved on to Australia.
Okay.
And that's where he got diagnosed and everything. But those last 2 people were pretty close and had a big impact. So that's my cancer story.
Sure. And as we discussed, and everyone listening and watching on this episode knows that there's very few of us who haven't been affected by cancer in some way, shape, or form. Right. And we often talk about this, or I often talk about this in terms of when people ask, well, why did you even start the Heroes Foundation, or what got you guys going? And it's all about taking that emotion and turning it into action, or as Nike once said, just do it. Mm-hmm. I've got a few folks that I've had that conversation with, and they're like, look, everybody has this intention about doing something oftentimes, or they feel the emotion of what we're trying to accomplish with our mission, but then it takes another set of folks to actually do something about it, right? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give them additional platforms for getting involved and doing something about it. So certainly, again, appreciate you joining the team and coming on board to scale Fit for Heroes, as well as really kind of get our arms around Project Militia and make a bigger impact with it, and not just Central Indiana, but really, you and I have some pretty high aspirations. We want to see this thing go statewide. And I know it's going to be a daunting task, but it's going to be a pretty rewarding one if we can make it happen. Right. And I think there's some pretty good bets that we can get close for sure. Well, what advice would you give someone who is in a similar role as yours? Based on all the experience that you have, what are some of the lessons that you've learned over the years in terms of putting on an event that have been as applicable today as they were maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago when you first learned them?
Try to learn from people that have done similar things, first of all. One, try to just think through and anticipate as much as you can, but also know that you can't anticipate everything. And no matter how much you plan, there will be something that doesn't go right.
Yeah.
And
there is no such thing as a perfect event.
There's not. And you just keep moving. And, it's one of those things, too, where if you have 100 people and 97 of them have a great experience and 3 of them don't, you hear from those 3.
Right.
But the 97 had a great event.
Yeah.
And that's in a way you can almost compare that or relate that to the cancer. That we're not going to save everyone, but if we can save, that person and that person and that person, then we're doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of like I don't know if you've ever heard of the starfish story of it's a big storm. The waves washed up all these starfish on the up on the shore, and there's a little kid walking down the beach, and he's picking up a starfish and throwing it back in, and a guy is watching him going, son, you can't save all the starfish. And he goes, no, I can't, but I can save that one.
Yeah, well said. I like it. We may have to tie that into a future project somehow.
Sure.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Well, what any questions you have for me?
Gosh. What kind of, I know how you got started, but what's been the driving factor to keep going?
I would say there's two main driving factors. One is, and I say this is for better and worse. I'm kind of never satisfied, and it's a good thing to have, and also but it's a double-edged sword for sure. So that's
we'll work on that.
Yeah, well, we'll try. That's one factor for sure. The other is when I continue to hear about cancer stories that aren't with, call it, positive outcomes, it continues to ignite me. Mm-hmm. And some stories hit harder than others, and I'm not trying to diminish everyone's story, but there are some stories that really hit me and for lack of a better term, just piss me off.
Yeah.
And it creates or reignites that fire inside that is really kind of filled with rage of wanting to do something about this. And I fully realize, like, I can't snap my fingers and suddenly, oh, hey, here's the cure for the however many hundreds of different types of cancers there are out there. Mm-hmm. But to your point, we may not be able to cure these, 500 forms of cancer over here, mm-hmm. but we could do something about these other 500 over here.
Right.
We're not going to save all the starfish, but we can save that one.
Right.
Or we can at least make a difference.
Right.
And that's the whole thing about going that idea of the just do it. I mean, Nike's. Mm-hmm. Kudos to Nike for coming up with that, because it's so applicable in so many ways. But look, we won't even have a chance if we don't get off our asses and try to do something about it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So we're making the effort, and again, we realize we can't be everything to everyone. So we're kind of honing that story, and really, it's right now all it's about is helping out the Indiana cancer community. So whatever we can do to benefit the Indiana community, to either reduce the incidence of cancer, better educate Hoosiers on ways they can try to prevent it, and then do our part. You have at minimum three. There may certainly be more. I'm not trying to count out any other mm-hmm. schools, but there are at a minimum 3 major universities here in the state of Indiana, all doing their own particular cancer research. And so we've already started to align with all 3 of them. You and I have talked about how we can take Fit for Heroes and do some more things and further those relationships and grow the funding and gifting that we can do to help them accelerate their research. dude, that's exciting. That's what gets me jacked.
Yeah.
I like building things. So whether it's
Yeah.
building the Heroes Foundation, building the SESA on the for-profit side, that's what pumps me up.
Yeah.
So again, I appreciate you joining the team. I look forward to what we can build together. Any other questions?
Yeah. Tell me more about Accessa.
Well, okay. Accessa is a family business that's been around since 1979. Today, my brother and I manage the company, and similar to the Heroes Foundation, we're builders. And so I think that idea of what was there when we started to take over in 2005 in terms of managing the day-to-day, we are not silver spoon kids. We are not cruise control kids. So we weren't just content on, well, we'll just keep the way it is and just run this thing out and everything will stay the course. We were always looking for what's next. How can we grow this thing? How can we continue to expand and do more? And so ever since I came in 2002, sorry. But in 2005, for the most part, our father was still active in the business, but Joe and I were kind of really running or managing the day-to-day. We've done that, and we certainly got through the Great Recession, which was an interesting time. That's maybe a better story to share over alcohol, but we got through that, and it certainly impacted the business then. But since then, we've grown it considerably, and have every intention of continuing to do that. And I'd like to see, and we've talked about this over probably the last 12 months, another doubling or even potentially tripling in the size of the company over the next 10 to 12 years. So small goals.
Yeah. So how do you balance what you do with Accessa and what you do here?
Oh, now you sound like my wife. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
But that's why I relied on great team members like yourself to come in and help do that, because like this thing is so much, both of them are so much beyond me, and the only way we're going to get to where either organization wants to go is to be able to have a great team behind us, or sorry, I shouldn't say behind us, alongside us, because that's the only way it's gonna get there. And so Heroes Foundation is, making the investment in yourself and making an investment in an executive director to really, lead us to where we want to go. And I hope to be a bystander really at that point in time. I want to, sure, help with the vision and do whatever I can, but really having a solid crew in place, because, I've talked about this. Really the goal now is building these things to live beyond us. Right. Sounds weird not to try to date us or whatever, but that's really the end game is leaving that legacy of these organizations so they can exist, long after we're gone, and hopefully continue to do good things and progressing the war on cancer in Indiana, if not the U.S.
Yeah.
So hopefully that answered. How do I balance it all? I don't know. My friends at Lilly won't put Prozac into M&Ms like I've asked them to.
Yeah.
So I guess it's caffeine and delusionalness.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if no more questions, thank you for joining us on this episode of the podcast, and I appreciate you sharing your cancer stories. You had several on there, much like many others, and again, I think at the end of the day, if we do our jobs, this is our motivation here for sure. All right, cool.
Yep. All right.
Well, thank you.
No problem.
And thanks to all of you guys for joining us on this episode of the Summits Podcast. We appreciate you guys listening from wherever you get your podcasts. And those of you on YouTube, the Heroes Foundation YouTube channel, thank you for checking us out. If you folks there on YouTube haven't hit that subscription button or the notification bell, hey, and you're still looking for what to do for a New Year's resolution, even though you're about a month into it, maybe that's your New Year's resolution. Hit those two things. It's absolutely free, and you're good to go. You're welcome. Oh, don't forget, everyone, beat cancer.